Hi, people. Welcome in to DNVR Fantasy on this special live Tuesday episode presented by DraftKings, the #1 sports betting app in the world. And, if you're not getting in now, I don't know what you're doing because big things happening all over the sporting world and Denver sports. But we're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about our aptly titled episode, Injury Armageddon in the NFL. What a disaster this week was. I mean, we knew it was going to be a crazy year. We knew we'd have some wild injuries. I don't think anyone expected it to be this monstrosity by week 2, though.
Yeah, no, this has been crazy. Like, I have teams that are missing 3 starters. Michael Thomas I have in a couple leagues. And that's not something I wanted because if you guys have been watching, you realize our takes on how to draft. But I wound up with Michael Thomas. He's out. Marlon Mack out. Just so many guys. Now, Saquon, too. Christian McCaffrey's missing time. Like, nobody is safe.
Think about that. The top 2 consensus running backs, the top consensus wide receiver. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So, yeah, there's a lot to talk about to the point that we're adding a second weekly episode on Thursday to kind of look forward to week 3. But right now, with Monday night in the books from last night, another wild one, we want to recap the wild week, get you ready for the waiver wire, which is going to be as important as any waiver wire probably in NFL fantasy football history. And we start with the Cleveland Derby, or the Ohio Derby, rather, Browns against Bengals on Thursday night. Joe Burrow with some injuries, with some rough starts at quarterback. I think of Carson Wentz, or a lot of Broncos fans might have drafted Drew Lock, who's now injured. Joe Burrow should be on most waiver wires. You could do a lot worse than Joe Burrow, who turns out maybe the Chargers defense is just really good because how he played against the Browns was completely different than how he played against LA.
Yeah, seriously. And he was somebody who I wasn't as excited about as I probably should have been, just because we knew for so long that he was the #1 overall pick. It was so easy to just say, okay, it's January. Well, he's going to the Bengals. And so on the draft podcast, we didn't talk about, but now finally getting to watch him in the NFL, having a reason to really dive in and watch him, he looks good. He looks really, really good. And I like what those receivers are doing as well. AJ Green hurt now too, of course, though.
Yeah, brutal. Tyler Boyd was really the one guy who had a good game. Mixon was serviceable, but doesn't get in the end zone, which really hurt you. Mm-hmm. Guy, are you posted up? Are you ready to talk with us? Because now's your big moment. Kareem Hunt. I don't think anyone made more out of their touches than Kareem Hunt, who just on 12 touches hauls in both his targets, gets a receiving touchdown, a rushing touchdown on just 10 rushing yards. Kareem Hunt looking very fantasy viable, you told us. So here's your victory lap.
Yeah, I hate to say I told you so. So welcome to Miami, I guess. But Kareem Hunt, this is a guy that, you were able to get him in 6th, 7th round?
Yep.
I'm loving the way he's playing, and I'm loving the way they're using him in that offense. Nick Chubb, it seems like the game script is always going away from him. He had a decent game this week.
Great game.
Yeah. Right, but Kareem Hunt is always involved no matter what, and he's really eating into Nick Chubb's ceiling.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the opportunity, if someone wants to trade you Kareem Hunt right now, I would jump all over it. But I also think that he's right now, you're going to be buying him at a high point, and that's a tough sell for me right now. Even as much as I like him, the value for what you're going to be getting is a little bit overpriced.
26.3 points for Nick Chubb in this one. So far from a bad game for him. But I do wonder if with Kareem Hunt being so good, might be time to feel out some sell highs after a nice week 2 against the Bengals on Thursday night. Okay, we move on quickly. Giants, Bears, man, devastating. I do not feel good about telling you I told you so about Saquon because I didn't see the injury happening. I think I was right about the Giants' offense kind of being a stinker, but devastating to have him go out with an ACL, one of the most exciting players in all of football.
Yeah, it changes things. And, the tough part here compared to a bunch of other injuries that happened across the NFL is that I don't really trust either of the guys who are going to get more touches with him out. And this is the one place where I think that there is just one fewer running back that you can have in fantasy football. You look at Christian McCaffrey, it's like, go pick up Mike Davis. And we'll get into this later, but that is somebody who will be a good fantasy value until Christian McCaffrey comes back. With Saquon, he's just like adding to this vacuum that already existed before the season for fantasy running backs.
Rough. I guess on the other side, David Montgomery, one of my starts for the week, did have a good game. Tariq Cohen got paid this week, but he has not been fantasy viable. Even in PPRs, I'm not sure what you do with him. Guy, are you panicking if you're an Allen Robinson owner? One of the few top 15 wide receivers still healthy at this point, but he hasn't played like a top 15 performer.
I get that, but at the same time, if things happen, has he signed a deal yet, or are they're still like quote unquote working on it?
Yeah.
And he still could potentially get traded. If he gets traded to a new team, that's actually probably the best case scenario here, which would be, I mean, whoever's going to pick him up is obviously going to have big plans for him.
Totally.
And he's going to, factor in that offense in a huge way. At the same time, I mean, the Bears are winning games, and I think that's kind of hampering their passing game because they're able to play a little bit more conservatively to try to seal the win. I think once they start playing some more difficult opponents and they have to air the ball out more and depend on, a faster offense, I think you're going to start to see more production from Allen Robinson. So if it were me, I mean, if Allen Robinson were in a trade, I think I would value him pretty well because you're buying him at a lower point, and his value is only going to increase from here. I think you're seeing the floor right now, and you're able to buy at that floor. It would be a good option.
Yeah, good point to be made. The Bears, one of the most surprising 2-0 team in the NFL.
They're pretenders.
Close, low-scoring games. Once they start to get behind, which we expect them to do quite often, they'll definitely have to target Robinson more. Okay, let's go to the fantasy game of the week. Probably the game of the week, with the Cowboys storming back to beat the Falcons 40-39. Both these quarterbacks, who we were pretty high on the value you could get, both Matt Ryan and Dak Prescott at in drafts, had terrific games. Zeke Elliott, who now with the injuries to McCaffrey, with the injury to Saquon, clearly the best running back remaining healthy in all of fantasy football. CeeDee Lamb's an absolute stud, it turns out, and Calvin Ridley is having the breakout of breakouts. I mean, talk about a guy who's really making you look like a genius as far as top 20 picks at wide receiver. Someone who's really struggled, however, early on in the year, Julio Jones. Anyone panicking here? Is this another buy low target?
No.
That's a tough call. It's a really tough call because he is still a great receiver, and so you have to think that the numbers are going to come. But, at this point, I'm not sure that I am trying to buy low on a guy like that just because of all the injuries. Like these 2-for-1 trades where you're sending two guys who are probably mid-level value to get him back and maybe some players worse. That is not my strategy right now. Instead, I'd much rather buy into a guy like Russell Gage, the third receiver, or a guy like CeeDee Lamb on the other side of this game, who's a number 3 receiver as well, just because I do think that with all these injuries, the number 3 receivers in good offenses are guys that I really want to target. I'm not so sure I want to be trying to consolidate assets at this point if I have other options.
Yeah, Julio did have a mega drop. I don't know if you guys saw that. I mean, it should have been a touchdown. It just kind of slipped through his arms. That would have ended the game for the Falcons and would have really made a huge difference for his fantasy output. So kind of some fluky stuff going on, but this is what Guy had warned us about with wide receivers, right? Much more feast or famine than your top running backs who are going to be reliable, and that's once again while we weren't really targeting wide receivers early in drafts and kind of holding off there. And
honestly, irrespective of how you feel of the Falcons as an actual NFL team, I think they're a gold mine right now for fantasy, and
Sure.
I'm buying anything I can get from them. Hayden Hurst had a fantastic game. Like you said, Russell Gage had a good game. I doubt you're really going to be able to get him at a fair price right now, so I would be wary of buying him. But Julio Jones is someone that I see as a buy low candidate right now because, like you said, that drop was uncharacteristic of him, and you said he's a great receiver. That's still underselling him. He's at least a top 3 receiver in this league, and that's a team that's very pass happy with a bad defense, so they always have a game script going towards Julio Jones producing, and I think he'll pick it up because he's he's Julio Jones, man. Like we know what we're getting from him, and with all these other guys dropping like flies, the ones that are truly elite are fewer and further between. So I'm actually going the opposite direction of Hank here, and I think that I would be more willing to give up some assets to try and consolidate and really get a top tier guy, because there are so many various waiver wire pickup options out there that you can easily fill holes when you're consolidating into like a truly elite talent that's going to be the core of your team. So if it's me, that's what I would be going for.
Yeah, definitely buying that Falcons offense. Transition here. Another offense I'm definitely buying in is the Green Bay Packers. I was a skeptic coming into the year. Aaron Rodgers proving me right. I wasn't skeptical about Aaron Jones, and I think I was the only guy here who had Aaron Jones ranked ahead of Saquon Barkley. I probably was one of the few in the world. So I guess the injury gods have rewarded me with that. Aaron Jones gets 2 touchdowns on the ground, a touchdown in the air. Really looked well. A.J. Dillon has yet to make a dent in that production. And, I mean, a little disappointing from Devontae Adams and some of the wide receivers for Green Bay. Not much to do here with the Lions offense.
Really quick, just to touch on a point you made there. You said A.J. Dillon has yet to make a dent into this offense, or at least Aaron Jones' production. I think that yet is a huge yet because he's looking really good, and I think they're starting to work him into that offense. And I think if you're feeling frisky, if you're 2-0, if you can find a way to get A.J. Dillon and have him just kind of chilling on your bench, I think he's in for a couple big weeks coming up.
I could see it. You know who's also playing really well, though? Aaron Jones.
I know that.
Yeah.
I'm well aware of that, but at the same time, I think that, I say this knocking on wood as an Aaron Jones owner, but I don't know if he can keep it up. Like, I hope he does, but at the same time, this is pretty insane production. And, I mean, these are 2 very bad teams that they played against in the Vikings and the Lions. And it's kind of an embarrassment that those teams weren't able to keep it closer, especially considering that the Lions were up 14-3 in the first quarter.
Yep.
And then they got 31 straight points scored on them. You talk about the Vikings just looking like a shell of their former selves. So I think that these matchups have been making him look very good. And if you have him, you're very happy with his production, and you hope it continues, and you love the way they're using him in the offense. I wouldn't get too far ahead of myself to be proclaiming him the number 1 running back in fantasy just yet. But, we'll see with these upcoming matchups. If he can continue to produce, then I'll have to eat my words. Like I said, I also did invest in Aaron Jones. So, I do believe him to a certain extent. Value. But I think that, temper expectations just a little bit on that.
Also, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He's really good. He's averaging just under 15 points per game through 2 games. Obviously still early, but he's also dropped 2 balls that touchdowns. And if he catches one of those in each of those games, and all of a sudden you're looking at somebody who's put up over 20 points per game, I don't know that he holds up with this level of production, but I do think he's probably worth grabbing and stashing, especially because this offense looks so good. And I think that he's starting to solidify himself as the number 2 receiver ahead of Allen Lazard, but that's going to be a back and forth battle all the way through.
That's another 3rd wide receiver in a good offense that you're targeting. Similar to Gage and CeeDee Lamb right there. A really interesting game for waiver wire purposes was Jaguars against the Titans. We talked about quarterback targets. If you lost a Drew Lock, someone like that, Minshew would be the top of the list for me. Ryan Tannehill too. I'm buying what Tannehill's doing. I think James Robinson kind of taking over that backfield for the Jaguars as one of the top waiver wire targets.
I think it should be noted that Ryan Tannehill did what he did without A.J. Brown, correct? He was out for this game, and he was still able to produce. Johnny Smith is I think he is probably one of my top 3 waiver wire pickups right now.
Yep, streamlining tight ends. He's big.
How the Titans have used Delaney Walker in years past. I think Johnny Smith is, he's an amazing athlete. He's someone that I was looking at as a deep sleeper before the season during, fantasy football drafts. I wasn't able to pick him up in my dynasty, which is unfortunate because now he's blown up and I'm not going to be able to get him at a fair price. But if you're able in a redraft, he should be available, and I think he's a big pickup, especially if you're hurting right now. If you're say a George Kittle owner and you're worried about filling that hole, Jonnu Smith is a big pickup this week for me.
Yep, Tyler Eifert kind of looking frisky in this too.
Yeah, I think that when you get to his age as a tight end, you can't really get open for yourself. I mean, you can get open for yourself a little bit, but you need the other people around you to be drawing the attention of the defense, and that's what's happening with those other weapons in Jacksonville. He can eat on these open underneath looks and do some other stuff too. I like that take, Andre.
Jonnu, definitely a priority pickup. Eifert, though, if you're kind of streaming tight ends, not a bad option.
Yeah.
Anything else here? Nice to see DJ Chark get back in line. Aside from that, James Robinson, man. We'll talk about a few more tie-end waiver wire pickups, but Robinson, especially this week, is as high on the list as you can get.
I can't imagine he's available in any leagues, but if he is, then go out of your way to get him. I will say
he didn't have a huge game week 1, so I think he'll probably be available more than others. There's a couple guys who should be available for
We will see. I mean, I think knowing, like, even if it wasn't a very big game, but knowing that he was the unquestioned RB1, and with Chris Thompson just kind of disappearing. Chris Thompson, he did a little bit in this game, but at the same time, I think that you can truly see that James Robinson is carrying the workload there in Jacksonville. I will say, though, Keelan Cole had a decent game, but I would be very wary of him moving forward. I wouldn't spend too much fab if you're, in a bidding war there in your waiver wire situation. But I don't know. I mean, I still have to see more from him is all I'm going to say there. He could be good, but I'm not ready to trust it just yet.
The offense is feeling nice, though, right? So that's a low-key buy low. An offense that isn't looking nice, and you should sell every investment you have on the Minnesota offense, like right now, yesterday, a week ago. It's terrible. Gary Kubiak hasn't been very good to fantasy owners, and that seems to really be the case this year. Well, on the other side, the Colts kind of surprised us. Jonathan Taylor's the big takeaway here.
Yeah, definitely. Just so dynamic. And obviously now, I mean, what is it, 26 carries? That is the kind of number that you just can't ignore. I mean, if he is on your team, you have to start him now. There was maybe a little bit of a question last week. At this point, it's put him in your lineup every week until these touches go down. And, I am fully bought in. If you can go out and get him, why not? Because with rookies, you expect them to get better over the course of the season. There is that rookie wall before the playoffs, and maybe that factors in somehow. But I'm on the Jonathan Taylor hype train for sure.
I mean, with all the injuries at running back, if we were to rank running backs going into week 3, he's knocking on the door of being a top 10 RB1 going into the week.
Top 10, that's it?
Well, I mean, I'm saying, conservatively.
Saquon just went down, Christian McCaffrey's out. I would put Jonathan Taylor pretty much within my top 5.
There's a good chance.
Nyheim Hines was non-existent, and this is coming from a guy who hyped him up on Sunday, and now I look like an idiot. I couldn't believe that he disappeared in that offense with no Marlon Mack, and he was already being featured in that offense, and all of a sudden he was just gone. And in such a high-scoring game where you figured that they would use him a little bit more, that kind of blew my mind, and it really solidified just how important Jonathan Taylor is right now. Easily top 5 for me.
What a difference a lead makes, right? The power back, when the Colts were up comfortably most of the game, they fed Jonathan Taylor. In a game week 1 where it was, neck and neck with the Jaguars, Nyheim Hines got a few more touches as the receiving back. But that's the thing with rookies. We got to be more patient without preseason, and already week 2, I think we're starting to see a few more returns. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's probably closer to top 5 than top 10. He's instantly a fantasy starter or an RB1, and I think a new QB1 to add to your list is Jonathan Allen, another guy who the rule of if you have him on your team, you got to start him right now probably applies to. He had the best game of his career, against the Dolphins this week. High-scoring game. Dolphins, man. Gesicki is a stud.
Yep.
John Brown, if Josh Allen's going to play this way, is a guy you definitely need to. We didn't talk about him much preseason, but you need to pay attention to. And Myles Gaskin in this backfield is pesky. You need to pay attention to him because he's going to get some production.
Yeah, I already have him on one of my benches, and I'm kind of stoked that I was able to get him basically for free off the waiver wire last week and find a spot for him. Kind of interested to see what he can do, but I don't really trust that offensive line that much. But yeah, like you said, Mike Gesicki is he's the guy to own on that offense right now. He's basically just like their wide receiver 1, even though he's a tight end. I was pleasantly surprised by Devontae Parker's involvement in the offense. I was pretty down on him this week. I almost put him on my sits. Ended up not doing that, thankfully. But, yeah, I mean, I was pretty, I don't know, worried, we'll just say, just based on his injury history and how it's affected his performance in years past. And to see him be able to come into this game questionable and still produce in a game where really, like, the Bills are one of the better teams, I think, in the AFC. So game script seems like it's always going to be favoring him being in that game. So
yeah, and jumping back to Gaskin, he was on the field for 65% of the offensive plays. That's a huge number, especially compared to the second most for running back, Matt Breida, at 21%, and then behind him, Jordan Howard at 11%. It's looking like this is his backfield. Same thing with Jonathan Taylor, by the way, 67% for him, 12% for Nyheim Hines.
Yeah. Moving on, Niners, Jets. That Niners offense that I was so invested in to start the year, shell of itself. There is not one starter, essentially, left because Garoppolo's injured. Their top two running backs are injured. Jordan Reed had a great game because Kittle is, not healthy. So Jerick McKinnon is the big storyline here because if there's one guy to start next week, it's him. If there's one guy who's up there with Mike Davis and James Robinson as the top waiver wire pickup in fantasy, it's him. We'll talk about Devontae Freeman in a sec.
Yeah.
But, man, I mean, what a bummer for anyone who invested in Kittle, anyone who waited to pick up their wide receivers late or bought into Mostert, who is looking really good. Now the Niners are just like backups and second strings on offense. It's crazy.
It is, but that's the stuff that happens. And that's what we were talking about before the season.
That's this season for sure.
We didn't say like the 49ers are going to be terrible, but you knew that they could potentially be in line for regression, and now we're seeing that regression.
I didn't see it happening this way.
Yeah,
we'll
seriously.
just say that. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo did tear his ACL, a season and a half ago, so this was never really out of the realm of possibility for him.
Sure.
Kittle has been dealing with injuries in seasons past, so that was kind of a possibility for him as well. I mean, on Thursday, I think we'll get more into like the future of this team, but yeah, I think my biggest takeaway from this is with all of the injuries that the Niners had and how they were just a shell of their former selves in the second half, the Jets still couldn't do a goddamn thing. And at this point, anybody I see playing the Jets is an instant start. Like, they just look like hot trash, and that's just a place to feast for anybody. I mean, they couldn't even. It's a complete second squad that they were unable to even put a dent in that deficit. And
yeah, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
The Jets are bad. The Jets are terrible. If you can pick up the defense that's playing the Jets, that is your play for the rest of the season. Like, I'm throwing in that waiver claim every week, dropping my defense for whoever's playing the Jets. And if it goes through, that's great. And I get him. If it doesn't, then I'll just keep riding with whoever it is I have.
There's multiple teams like that right now. This is
a
complete, like, when we talk about taking your defense and your kicker in the last two spots, this right here is the case for it because you've got teams like the Broncos who are decimated by injuries. You've got the Vikings who are just a mess. The Jets. There's plenty of other teams that really, I mean, look at the Falcons with the way their defense collapsed. Like, there's so many teams right now that if you just look at spot starting defenses against them, you can really feast on that. And, these high-rated defenses like, say, the Steelers are really not performing up to standard as well. So streaming defense is the way to go is the lesson, the takeaway there.
Yeah, for sure. Before we jump into another team that, I mean, the Eagles might not quite be at that level, but it's starting to almost
They're
get
close.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to our presenting sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook, the top-rated sports betting app in the country. Always such great, odds boosts, props, especially for our fantasy listeners. There's all sorts of individual props that you can jump on. Like, I had Phillip Rivers to throw an interception as my big prop going into the week.
It's a good one.
He had a tip pick down in the red zone on their very first possession. It was a beauty. What was your prop? It was an individual based? Oh, Laviska Shenault.
No, that was Arcays. What was mine? I'm totally blanking on it.
Shame on you for forgetting that. You can
No,
get
you had the
all
same
of
prop.
these.
You had the same
No,
prop.
no, we had the other two the same. Mine was Russell Wilson more passing yards than Cam Newton because
and that
Cam was the
failed.
favorite. It did fail.
That failed.
The first time I've bet against the Patriots in months, and I missed because of it. It's what I deserve.
Yep, that failed. So all of that fun stuff. I mean, really, it's a great place for fantasy users to take advantage of their knowledge and get those props in, or you want to fade the Jets, go for it, because early in the season you're not getting those massive point spreads that you will be getting soon enough. That was my lock, was the Steelers -7, or I'm sorry, the 49ers -7 over the Jets. They won by over 21. So, yeah, download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code DNVR when you sign up to get this can't-miss offer. Pick, all sorts of great deals that they have. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Profit boost. Terms and conditions and eligibility restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. Okay, I teased it. We had a great matchup of Goff versus Wentz.
Mm-hmm.
Picks 1 and 2 of their respective draft classes. Miles Sanders returns. He plays great. Aside from their tight ends, basically the only guy you want to mess with on this Eagles offense because everyone else is looking like trash. Well, the Rams offense is really looking great. Goff has been phenomenal. Cooper Kupp had a really big game. Tyler Higbee,
Bobby
another
Trees.
tight end.
My boy Bobby Trees got paid too. I'm loving him right now.
Yeah.
And here, this is a backfield you're really interested in because Malcolm Brown gets hurt. Cam Akers gets hurt. Darrell Henderson has a nice game. And they pick up Devontae Freeman from free agency. Perfect for this system.
When did that
The
happen?
former Falcon. I don't know, man. Last couple days.
We'll get
You
on
know,
that.
So Kyle Shanahan was, Freeman in Kyle Shanahan's offense has been outstanding. Similar offense here with the Rams. I think Darrell Henderson is going to be the guy who gets most of the touches, but the Freeman signing does scare me off a little bit.
I think Devontae Freeman's actually going to the Giants per Mark Garafolo today.
My bad.
But I think he worked out there. Yeah. That was one of the crazy ones. I didn't realize he'd signed anywhere. I thought that we were going to have to decide whether you take him as a free agent because he's getting signed somewhere, and there are so many options. But yeah, without them getting Devontae Freeman, I mean, last week, even with the injury to Henderson, or to Brown, Brown 54% of the touches, Henderson 42%. Like, that is tough. Like, Henderson might just take the entire load there because I don't know why you
without
wouldn't.
something like Freeman happening, that's automatic.
Yeah, especially
becomes
because,
huge.
like, when you look at the carries, 12 carries for Henderson, 81 yards, 11 carries for Malcolm Brown, 47 yards. So he was outplaying him as well as getting this injury. Like, I would be all in on Darrell Henderson, even if weren't for the injuries. I think that he is my top waiver pickup if he is available.
I gotta say, as a Cam Akers owner, which I'm not, if I were one,
2 leagues. I've got 2 leagues.
I would be pretty concerned about that. The fact that they're really just going to anybody bet Cam Akers right now, even though he's being handed this opportunity on a silver platter with injuries and everything else on a good team. You see Jonathan Taylor really able to take advantage of his opportunity, and Cam Akers is not able to take advantage of his opportunity. So it's concerning. I mean, Cam Akers is a guy that you probably had to take in the 5th, 6th round almost.
Yeah, but does this also mean that they're just going to be passing the ball more? Like, is there a real chance that instead of they ran the ball 39 times last time? Again, 12 of those to Henderson. Are they going to ramp that up to the point where he's getting 25, 26 carries and you're piecing together the other 10 or 11? Or do they just start throwing the ball more? Because I really think that that's possible with Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, who looked solid, caught 4 of 5 targets. I think this is an offense that I'm still willing to buy into even with the injuries. I'm just not really sure where I would go in doing that outside of Henderson, of course.
Yeah, and we should mention Akers did suffer a rib injury. That's why he didn't play. They're saying he's, day-to-day, basically. So status is up in the air for this Sunday. But, yeah, that seems like Darrell Henderson's backfield for now. Yeah. Okay, Broncos, Steelers, no Drew Lock. Melvin Gordon plays really well. That receiving touchdown was huge. On the Broncos side, not many more takeaways to have. I don't think Melvin Gordon's so sustainable without Drew Lock. That becomes really hard.
Interesting.
That touchdown was key for him. I don't know that you can keep that up. On the other side, James Conner, everything came down to that 159-yard run against the Gas defense. He doesn't get that. It's a terrible game for him. It's kind of a terrible game for the Steelers' offense, aside from 2 young wide receivers. Deontay Johnson looked really good. Chase Claypool, I think both, especially in deeper leagues, especially in PPR leagues, need to be picked up and at the bottom of your roster because I see plenty of upside with those guys.
Yep. And last week I was pounding the Benny Snell table, but he only had 4 touches. And right now, if you're one of the people who did pick him up or you had him beforehand or whatever, it's time to cut that man and start putting in waiver claims for the guys that we've been talking about.
Yeah, not great from Benny Snell. I mean, there's always an injury around the corner, especially with
true.
James Conner. So kind of be guarded, but yeah. Another running back that was pretty disappointed, Ronald Jones, the second for me. All of a sudden, that's Leonard Fournette's backfield. So
you think so?
Yeah.
Or is this just like back to the clown car? Has it, like, because before it looked like it was going to be Ronald Jones's backfield. I guess before that it looked like a clown car. But then now, are we to the point where it's shifted back to the center where it's a split? Or is it really just Leonard Fournette from here on out?
They're definitely riding the hot hand. It doesn't help that Fournette was that devastating with just 12 carries.
That might as well be Russian roulette over there in Tampa Bay. I want nothing to do with that backfield. I didn't want anything to do with it in the beginning of the season, and now that we're here, just the unpredictability of it. Someone's going to go off. You don't know who. And, barring injuries, you're never really sure if you should be starting the guy or not. It's just a crapshoot, and I want nothing to do with that.
Agreed.
With all the injuries at wide receiver, I do think there's plenty of RB2 value with who's in that backfield. You just need to be clever about guessing who that is. And maybe you're better off picking up whoever's going to be the starter in Carolina to take over for Christian McCaffrey. Looks like it's going to be Mike Davis. Curtis Samuel, though, sneakily someone who you need to keep an eye on at least.
Yeah, and that would be a lot of fun, but I'm not willing to bet on it until I see it. Until then, I'm betting on Mike Davis being the guy that they roll with, especially because we saw him catch the ball, which is such a big part of what that offense wants to do. And if you're the guy who's getting those catches, I think, let's see, I just pulled it up. Yeah, 8 catches for 74 yards. Those numbers probably won't be that high, but he's still going to at least get you 3 or 4. I'm pretty confident. Pick up 20 yards at least there. So there's 6 points on top of what he can do running the ball, which is good enough for me to say start him. Definitely pick him up. He's right up there in that top tier of waiver claims for me too, especially because all of these running backs are hurt.
Yep. Cardinals, Washington professional football team. Guy, is Kyler Murray so good that he's concerning you a little bit for your Kenyon Drake takes? Is he stealing too many touches from the Drake?
This is some galaxy brain stuff right here. I'm not thinking that far. I'm just seeing all the potential that's on that offense, and I think everyone stands to benefit from it. I'm in love with the Cardinals right now. I need to get myself a Cardinals hat because really the season appears to be over for the Broncos, and that's the team that I am the highest on right now. I got the Seahawks right up there, but the Cardinals, their ceiling is just like, it's immense. After what we've seen with breakout seasons from Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that this is Kyler Murray's year. I have money on him winning the MVP this season, and I don't know if I have them going all the way to the Super Bowl, but they're definitely making the playoffs, and that's an explosive offense that runs a ton of plays. Everyone's involved there. Love to see it, and they kind of have a bad defense, so they're always going to have a game script that's going to favor getting more opportunities for all these guys. So Kenyon Drake, he can still catch the ball. He's not dependent on, a positive game script to get him in there to be closing things down in the third and fourth quarter. To answer your question, that was a very long answer to your question. The answer is no, I'm not concerned with how well Kyler Murray is playing, impacting Kenyon Drake's value.
And you mentioned the number of plays they're running. 73 plays on offense last week.
This is what I told you before the season started. They are a high-tempo offense, and they were always in line to run this many plays. More opportunity means more points, and they have a ton of skill to go with all of that opportunity. And all those things together, it just equates to just fantasy goldmine. So I'm waiting for Christian Kirk to get involved.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's been not so much an equal opportunity offense. It's been Murray, Hopkins, and Drake's been serviceable, not great. I mean, his average per carry's been below 4.5.
Still,
we got to get him going a little bit.
You talk about buying into specific offenses, though. This is an offense that I want to be a part of. If Kenyon Drake's available for, a somewhat nominal rate, I think you jump on that because right now you're going to be getting him. This is basically his floor. Again, buying at value. This is a value right now. I think it's the sky's the limit for this team, and I think that you want to be a part of that. Chase Edmonds as well. I mean, barring, there could be injuries. Like, I think you kind of have to set yourself up for, getting ahead of injuries to a certain extent because, obviously this waiver wire is going to be pretty nuts, and you're still going to be able to get some good guys because there were so many injuries. But at the same time, if you don't have high waiver priority or you don't have a lot of fab to spend, if you can get ahead of injuries and start positioning yourself for handcuff backs and things like that.
Chase Edmonds, yeah.
Yeah, you can really strike gold if you have a guy in a good offense. And Chase Edmonds with skill and being a part of this offense, I think is a huge candidate for me right now as a very preemptive pickup, even though he hasn't actually done anything yet. Because we've already seen
it's a very
before the season
pickup.
started. Yeah, before the season started, Kenyon Drake was walking around in a walking boot. So there is potential that he could re-aggravate, and God knows whatever else could happen. I think Chase Edmonds for me is a really big guy right now in terms of handcuff value.
One concern for me about Kenyon Drake before we move on, not a huge one, but 2 targets week 1, 2 targets week 2. I did expect more of him in the passing game. Maybe that's still just on the way, but it is something to keep an eye on if you're in a PPR league.
Yeah, no, I expected them to spread the ball a lot more. In the air, it's mostly been the DeAndre Hopkins show.
Yeah.
Which I didn't see coming at all. That's why I had him ranked so lowly.
I don't think any of us did, but pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, great AFC West game shootout, not really, defensive battle. It turns out maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire isn't the greatest player in all of football just yet. Nice to see that he, too, is a mere mortal like the rest of us. I want to bet against you on Austin Eckler guy. We put the number at 14.5. He went off for 18.8, so just barely.
Yeah.
Joshua Kelly, sneakily my top guy to pick up on the waiver wire. I think he's still available in many leagues. He went over 100 total yards in this game as well. Definitely pick him up. Regardless of Eckler's status, he still is a valuable start. 23 carries in this game. And it definitely makes a difference when Justin Herbert's at quarterback for the Chargers offense to feel like a viable fantasy offense where your wide receivers aren't just like going to die.
Yeah, in my defense, Tyrod Taylor got benched this week, and that was my chief reasoning for Austin Eckler not having a good week. Are you going to say you foresaw that coming, that Justin Herbert would really open up the offense for Austin Eckler?
No.
Yeah.
I thought Tyrod would. I mean, I thought one way or another they'd use Austin more. So, yeah, it worked out.
They found a way to get it done. I was actually kind of surprised at how poorly the Chiefs played. It wasn't just Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It was like everybody was having just miscues, and it was I don't know.
Anthony Lynn,
terrible game to watch, to be honest with you.
has figured out ways to play the Chiefs.
That Chargers defense is built to play the Chiefs.
Yep,
like they can go man. I mean, Chris Harris, sure, getting roasted for the touchdown, gave up to Tyreek Hill. Well, guess what? Everybody gives up a touchdown to Tyreek Hill. He played really well against Tyreek in that game, and that is one of the major keys to beating that team. My question now, though, is how scared are we of the Chargers defense? Because they gave up 20 points, or I guess 23 points because of overtime to the Chiefs. The week before that, gave up 13 to the Bengals, but then that Bengals offense blew up. Sure, against the Browns, it's not great. But
Chargers defense for real.
I think this is more, because it's a divisional matchup, like you're saying. Anthony Lynn has to play against the Chiefs twice a year. So he's seen this team, and he, like you said, he's built this defense to contend with them. Everyone in the AFC West has to have built to contend with the Chiefs because they're the top dog, right?
Yeah, but
playing against the Bengals, come on, the Bengals are just a bad team. Like, they've got, a whole new offense going on.
I'm not convinced.
They're not a good team. I'm not convinced that the Chargers are a good defense yet. They could sway me. I just need to see a little more. They don't have Derwin James, which is a huge loss, but they're still producing. We'll see.
On paper, they're a great defense, but the concern is, will the injuries just add up? And they're a good defense now, but they won't be in a couple weeks because, they lose Bosa and Ingram, who are often injured.
I was going to say, of all the teams in the NFL, they're the most oft injured, are they not? I mean, they seem to have one of the worst like strength and conditioning staffs in the NFL, and they always battle with injuries year in and year out. So in a year where injuries are already more prominent,
we'll say.
Yeah, I would
hasn't
not
been the case with them yet, though.
Yet. I mean, that's
Yeah,
it's a
I mean,
huge yet.
Mike Williams and Derwin James have been out, so they've got that going for them.
We'll see.
One more note on the Chargers, though. Eckler, 57% of the time in the backfield. Joshua Kelly, 52%.
Yeah. I mean, he had 23 carries. Man.
I started him in my league, and I was happy. Make sure that you're trying to pick him up if you can.
There are very few backs that got 23 carries week 1 or week 2. Ravens, Texans, another bet we had in-house. Who was on the David Johnson under? Was that you? You had the David Johnson
I think I had the
over?
David Johnson over. Were you the one who had him on your sit list, or was that guy?
That was Guy.
Okay. Yeah, I had him on my start list, and that's where that bet came from.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I was wrong.
Yeah.
Just to throw that out there.
And then what to make of this Ravens backfield? Gus Edwards has the most rushing yards. Lamar Jackson has the most carries. J.K. Dobbins has the longest run. Mark Ingram is the one who gets a touchdown.
It's a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah, that's not what you want as a fantasy owner.
And what makes it even tougher, again, I'm mostly playing the PPR league, so that's how my brain has been working when we go through this. The toughest part is there isn't a huge difference in the targets either. So it's not like you can even say, well, at least you know you're going to get the ball thrown his way a couple of times and salvage a couple points there. This might be the best running game that I'm willing to say, just don't touch it.
I know, because it's still 36-7 carries, 230 rushing yards. You'd think there would be one viable running back in that backfield, but there really isn't. This is one where if you're trying to think ahead rather than a Chase Edmonds, I might target J.K. Dobbins because he's making the most of his touches. I feel like we're a couple weeks away, but right now it's an absolute mess.
I mean, Chase Edmonds is the guy you're getting on the waiver wire, and J.K. Dobbins is the guy you're gonna have to pay. You're gonna have to pay for, and I think you're buying him sort of at a ceiling here. Someone that drafted J.K. Dobbins, they know his potential. They saw his tape. They know that it's the Baltimore Ravens offense, and they see that Mark Ingram has been underperforming. I mean, maybe you have someone who hasn't been paying attention that much, but for the most part, people aren't dumb, man. J.K. Dobbins is the real deal, man. I'm looking forward to seeing him in years to come.
2 carries week 2.
1 reception. I mean, and that's
I'm just
the thing,
talking about the skill on the field, though.
Yeah.
Like, it's not showing up in the stat line yet, but if you're a J.K. Dobbins owner, you have to have seen that. I have him in a league. I'm not letting anyone have him. I'm waiting for that breakout.
And I'm not
I would
selling.
target him where you can find him in a redraft, and he's on the waiver wire.
And I'm not selling this Ravens backfield, especially with all the injuries we've seen. Eventually, like when this is a 3-person backfield, I mean, you can even call it 4 with Lamar. That's when you have to stay away. But as soon as Mark Ingram or J.K. Dobbins or whoever it is misses a game, then all of a sudden it's the carry split 2 ways, and I'm happy starting either one of those guys. And that's why I'm not willing to sell this backfield yet.
Yeah, I guess he is rostered in 90.6% of leagues. That's a lot. Up 0.64% or 6.4%. And then the receiver situation for the Texans, a bit of a disaster with Will Fuller's injury. Now it's going to be Brandon Cooks or Randall Cobb or Kenny Stills. I would, since I'm kind of assuming Brandon Cooks will be hurt in a couple weeks, I would just preemptively buy Randall Cobb stock and have him on my bench because I think he'll give me 10 points per game for a while in a PPR. So.
And I just need to say this Kenny Stills bet I made when we each took receivers is looking worse and worse by the week. And I want to say, like, there's no way for me to back out of it now, but I'm willing to accept the defeat and not die on this horse. I mean, it's...
I don't know. With the injuries, I think you're
got,
coming
15
alive.
More games,
Yeah,
dude. You're giving up in week 2.
Well, I went home the night we made that bet and was not excited about it. I was like, the reason I like Kenny Stills is for the value you can get him at compared to the other weapons in the offense.
Also,
he's just not getting the touches.
He doesn't get injured as much as Cooks or
Also,
Fuller. But at the
that's
same
true.
time, the fact that he hasn't been injured and he's still underperforming
Yeah. I mean, 3
is
targets.
concerning.
He's
So,
just not being targeted.
yeah. And I like
don't get
that
it.
Randall Cobb pickup. If you're able to get him, that's a sneaky good pickup, I think. Because,
Yeah.
like you said, Brandon Cooks is kind of due for an injury. So, and that comes from someone who has Brandon Cooks in multiple leagues. It has a bet on him. I took him in that 3-way bet, and I'm just high on him in general. I'm nervous about his injury history and all the injuries that we saw this week. I would start thinking about contingency plans for him.
Mm-hmm.
Another great fantasy matchup, Patriots-Seahawks. Man, Cam Newton, another dude like Josh Allen, you kind of got to start right now, pick him up. These rushing touchdowns are really just paying for themselves. Julian Edelman did not think he would be at this level. 8 catches for 179 yards was beastly.
Did Tom Brady hold Julian Edelman back? Is that what we're seeing?
Probably to some extent, yeah.
Because now with like the deep balls and all that kind of stuff, Julian Edelman, I mean, that was a career game. 8 catches, 179 yards. My goodness, he was everywhere. And, I mean, Cam, like the rushing touchdowns help, but 397 passing yards doesn't hurt either.
I hope
like
there's
this
a little
offense,
tongue-in-cheek in that because...
He
only won, 4 Super Bowls with him?
But we don't care about that in fantasy, right?
I get that, but at the same time, look at all the weapons that are around Julian Edelman and how inept they are. So Julian Edelman is the guy that you kind of just have to go to. I think that the Seahawks might have underestimated Cam Newton, much like myself. I thought that he was kind of, that his arm was not very good anymore and that he was really just surviving on his ability to run the ball. But we saw him really making some really good throws in this game. He outthrew Russell Wilson, even though Russell Wilson got the win. Like you said, this is fantasy, and we don't care about wins. We care about points. And Cam Newton right now is, this is like that 2015 Panthers season where he's looking that good again.
He's not even familiar with that offense.
I know.
They're running like 30% of that offense, I guarantee.
And the thing is Bill Belichick finally having just a gadget that he can actually use.
Yep.
Because like you're saying, I don't want to say that Tom Brady was holding Julian Edelman back, but he didn't have the dynamic playability that Cam Newton does right now.
Yeah.
And in terms of fantasy points, this is kind of unprecedented for this New England offense. So,
and just as a football nerd, it's really fun to watch this Cam Newton experiment go. Because, when they get down the red zone, how many times did we see them line up with a running back to the right, a running back behind him, and then just motion those guys where you want them? I'm not sure if it was like pre-planned where they go. It did seem like they were mostly going to the same spot every time, or whether that's like Cam seeing something and say you're going there, and then just say Cam's gonna run it, and then you counter with the pass. And it didn't work on the last play when they needed it to win the game. But now the Patriots know, and Bill Belichick knows, that they have that in the back pocket. That is something they can pull out. And just to see, like, is that something we're gonna see a lot of next week? Do we not see it at all for 2 weeks and then they go back to it? This Patriots team, like, watching Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels learn how to use these guys is fun. I wish that it was 2 different guys and they were wearing different colors with a different logo, but as a football fan, it's fun.
That last play of that game, though, was, I don't know what the hell they were thinking there.
I didn't love it. But
see, now they had a lot more points, but I think that, they'll look at that and be like, what the heck were we thinking?
Yeah, as the Buffs guy here, though, I can say that, like, the Laviska Shenault in the Wildcat play was unstoppable. I think he was something like 13 of 14 when he had to pick up 1 yard, or I think it was like 2 yards or less when he was running that Wildcat play where you go up the middle. Now we learned on that last play, that is not just automatic. That can be stopped. And so you do need to counter it. And it's just so much fun to watch. My last take on the Patriots, though, pick up Damian Harris. Because as soon as he comes back, he's going to go. Because Rex Burkhead doesn't have it. Sony Michel doesn't have it. That is going to be the lead guy.
It is an understatement.
Yes.
Rex Burkhead, I think he's still dependable in terms of like blocking.
Yeah.
And when you're running an option like that, having
if there's a fantasy viable back in this backfield with James White out, it's Damian Harris when he comes back.
Yeah. Unfortunately for James White, that's it's not an injury or anything. It was a tragedy, but I think that he'll be back. So I don't know if we can, start prognosticating on who it's going to be just yet. James White isn't like his career is not over because of this or anything.
Sure.
So he'll be coming back, but I do think that Rex Burkhead's ability to block is gonna allow him the opportunity to see the field more.
I know. I'm willing though at this point to take my gamble on Damian Harris, get in before we see him play well, because I really think that's going to happen. Especially because you don't get pancake points famously in fantasy football.
Yeah, sure. He's like your 10th waiver wire running back pickup with all that we've talked about. Seahawks offense obviously incredible. Freddie Swain to me is becoming a pickup in dynasties. The rookie wide receiver from Florida, especially if you get return points. This is a nice little dynasty pickup. They've been using him way more than I expected. Monday Night Football, Saints, Raiders, unexpected. Darren Waller is a beast. Alvin Kamara, obviously great. Josh Jacobs, did not expect that from him, but they kept feeding him the ball. He was pretty nice, too, even though he didn't get in the end zone. Are we scared from the Saints passing offense? Obviously, they're more Michael Thomas dependent than we might have thought. Traquan Smith, a decent pickup. Emmanuel Sanders, really underwhelming.
Drew Brees looks like his AARP card is in the mail.
Yeah,
And
not good.
without Michael Thomas, it's just, yeah.
And I think
I'm fading that outside of Alvin Kamara, I'm fading that Saints team hard.
what's so tough
Pretty
is that
much.
I really like what I've seen from Traquan Smith. But in that offense, is it worth it with Drew Brees? And you have like that wild card or like that insurance policy in Jameis Winston where if things get so bad, Drew Brees is so bad, he can come in. And, for fantasy-wise, I would almost rather see him on the field if I have a Saints receiver instead of Drew Brees at this point. Is that a fair take?
If anything,
Just
it's
purely
exciting to
fantasy-wise.
watch, man. It's like a car crash. You can't look away when Jameis Winston's in the game.
Exactly.
So I kind of do hope we see Jameis Winston now that you mention it.
And it's almost like the Broncos Super Bowl year when the offense started to lose it. The defense obviously isn't up to those standards, but I do wonder if there will be a stretch where they say, "Hey, Drew, let's sit down for a couple weeks. Let's throw Jameis in for a couple weeks and just let him ride."
Yeah, Drew, you've had a fantastic Hall of Fame career and won the city.
I know these are
Super
hot
Bowl.
takes.
Wow.
I know.
We're gonna sit you even though you're not hurt for this guy that threw 30 interceptions
From a fantasy
last year.
standpoint, it'd be magnificent.
Yes.
But yeah,
Sure.
it's not happening
But from
until
an
an
actual
injury happens.
winning games
yeah.
in the NFL standpoint, it's absolutely not going to happen.
We're a
because
long
you're
ways
paying
away.
that guy an exorbitant amount of money in order to.
Absolutely. We're an
Finish his
injury
career out.
away for everything to happen this
Yeah.
season. So
Yeah. I guess that's it. I mean, Raiders though. Josh Jacobs, not all that
Ryan Edwards
efficient,
starting
but
to come along.
It just really
Yeah.
makes you sick to see the Raiders succeeding.
yeah,
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, Darren Waller, I said it, top 4 tight end. He certainly proved it last night.
Yeah.
16
And I-
targets. Nobody else had more than 3 in that offense.
God, Josh Jacobs right now in terms of fantasy he's got to be top 5, right? Running back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, you have 3 top 5 guys in the AFC West alone. Then you have Zeke Elliott. Then you start to consider Chris Carson, Jonathan Taylor,
Aaron Jones.
Kenyon Drake, Aaron Jones, absolutely top
It's Aaron.
5.
Well, Aaron Jones is like is right there, and then I got like Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs. I'd probably put Clyde there, even though he had a dud this week, just because of his involvement in probably the best offense in the NFL.
Going up against a good defense.
Yeah,
Dalvin Cook still kind of up there, I'd say.
top 5 though.
No, I mean, but we're well out of the top 5. Miles Sanders still firmly in there. Then it gets a little tricky. Time to answer some questions. I'll let you handle the Discord, Hank. I'm going off our post. If you're a subscriber, reach out, lounge, our podcast post. You can always ask us questions, and we will be here to ask questions on our Thursday audio-only pod. And you guys asked a ton of great questions on the Tailgate Live Sunday mornings. So that was phenomenal. Keep them coming all around. Jackstrop Jerry asks, hey, guys, with A.J. Brown likely out this week, we're going to see this obviously was submitted prior to this, but I think it still applies. Who would I start at the flex? Traquan Smith, James Robinson, Robbie Anderson, or Josh Kelly? Thanks for the help. We don't have PPR specifications here, so I assume it's a standard.
I'm still gonna say Robbie Anderson.
Really?
I love the way they're
Really?
using him in
Nice.
that offense. And it's not just like, everyone said like, oh, Robbie Anderson's just, a deep threat, like Deshaun Jackson type of guy. That's absolutely not how they're using him. Like, yeah, he runs deep routes, but he's running underneath too. And like, he's seen the ball a lot. And this is a team that, like we talk about, game scripts, they're always going to be down and they're always going to have to find somebody to make a big play. And Teddy Bridgewater's been looking his direction a lot. They seem to have good connection. And with Christian McCaffrey out, I think that just gives him more opportunities. So I'm very high on Robbie Anderson, and if he's still available on your waiver wire, for me, he might be the number 1 pickup.
Here's the thing, though. The Panthers are playing the Chargers, and we just saw what the Chargers did. I really think that I would stay away, especially when you have Joshua Kelly on the other side
All right.
going against the Panthers
It's bedtime.
defense. Oh,
time.
I like it.
We're going over under. Do you want to do 10,
No,
12?
Josh
Let's-
Kelly
yeah.
outperforms Robbie Anderson fantasy-wise.
Perfect.
Josh Kelly, Robbie Anderson?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, then I got Robbie Anderson. You guys are both taking Josh Kelly.
I am for sure. Who are you taking here, Dre? It's a tough one.
You
One
set the bet, too.
second.
I thought you already knew. Thought you
One
did that with
second.
your answer in mind.
I just want to see who James Robinson and Joshua Kelly play.
Joshua
So-
Kelly plays the Panthers.
Yeah, no, I'm taking Kelly for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright.
Ooh, this is going to be a fun one.
Let's do it. And then the count asks, what's something that you continuously do in fantasy football that you know you shouldn't, but you can't help yourself?
Ooh, I know
Love
what
the
it
count.
is. I know what it is because
I
I was
know.
just thinking about this today. The problem for me is that I take guys and think by the end of the year, they are going to be good. And this is somebody I'm going to want at the end of the season. But then I get to right now, week 3, and I say, ooh, the waiver wire's looking nice. I might have to drop whoever it is and pick somebody up. And the conversation I was having with myself today was Robbie Anderson. Just because there's so many guys on the waiver wire I like, I didn't pull the trigger, obviously. You just can't cut Robbie Anderson right now, I don't think. But that is mine, is that I draft somebody with the end of the season in mind and then get too quick to drop whoever that is to pick up a waiver guy.
This one's easier for me. My biggest mistake is continuing to believe in the Detroit Lions. Fool that I am. I've been warned so many times, and I've seen the evidence with my very own eyes. And I continue to hitch
great.
my wagon to the Detroit Lions, and I don't know why I do it. And, yeah, I probably should seek help for it at this point. But anyway, that's mine. Not that
I
it's helpful
used to
necessarily.
overvalue running quarterbacks a lot.
I don't think you can overvalue him at this point. That's what.
You must have been really overvaluing him.
No, I mean, like,
Look at the way that Cam Newton is just. it's
right.
just
Cam
resurgence.
Newton, I could have picked
Kyler
off
Murray,
the waiver wire
Lamar
last
Jackson
week.
had one of the best seasons from a quarterback ever.
Right. When he
It's-
was picked up in
His
like the
rushing
10th
production
round
is what
in fantasy.
really buoyed that.
Right.
Pat
Again,
Mahomes, when he had his really good season, he was rushing the ball.
these are all guys that
Josh
could have been
Allen?
had at really good values when you drafted them.
Right.
I've
Josh Allen right now, though?
overdrafted Michael Vick. I've overdrafted Aaron Rodgers because I like the way he scrambles. I've overdrafted Colin Kaepernick, RG3 back in the day, Cam Newton when he didn't have an MVP season. They're just, yeah, it's nice when they have good rushing production, but it's very hard to predict, and you just end up like overspending when you could have just waited for Josh Allen in a year like this, or Dak Prescott in a year like this, or Kyler in a year like this, or Cam Newton in a year like this. You know, there's just like,
I would argue you still had to sort of overdraft to get them anyway. Like Josh Allen, you had to get in like what?
Josh
Like
Allen,
the 7th
yes.
to the 8th?
Josh Allen, yes. You were overdrafting Dak.
But my point is that he's actually rewarded you,
You
because
were-
Josh Allen, like, his arm is decent, but the way he's running the ball is like that's what's really
Yeah.
sustaining his fantasy production.
But not so much last week where he finally threw for 400 yards.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It wasn't the running production, you know. So,
It helped.
anyways, it helped, but it's just it rewards you way less than it punishes you. You're just better off waiting on quarterbacks and like playing it out.
This one's from the Discord. Uncle Willie says, 2-quarterback league. Do I go all in with my fab to snag Herbert? Already have Matt Ryan and Jimmy G. Quarterback touchdowns are worth 6. Well, Jimmy G is hurt, so that doesn't help. But here's the thing about Justin
I don't
Herbert.
think you'd have to spend that much for Justin Herbert, though.
No. And
Well, it's a 2-quarterback league.
I know that.
oh, so
but
it would be
still-
more.
But still, Justin Herbert?
I mean, listen to this quote from Anthony Lynn. There's a lot we didn't get done with Justin on the field yesterday. He's a backup for a reason. Like, Justin Herbert wasn't supposed to start that game. Tyrod
Right.
Taylor was hurt. Justin Herbert is not the starter there, and if you're picking him up, you're hoping that he's going to be the starter eventually, which I think he will, because I was impressed,
He's
especially compared to
definitely-
what we've
yeah,
seen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but
his
the
path.
second part of that quote was he's the backup for a reason.
And that's
that
scary.
Concerns me. Yeah, that
Yeah.
means that they know that he's prone to mistakes. And yeah, we saw a good game from him. And I think that had
Yeah.
more to do with the fact that the Chiefs weren't able to scout him, and they didn't name him the starter until like a half hour before the game.
Yeah, because there was
So all
a
of a
freak
sudden,
injury.
what's your game plan for Justin Herbert? So I think that he was able to exploit that, but I would be concerned moving forward just based on that quote. Like, just him saying about his own quarterback that he's a backup for a reason is like,
his post-game quotes were so weird. He was like, not high on Herbert. He was like, oh, I'm not going to give him a good grade. You know, we just lost the game, so we want to win games. We're not feeling super positive. And like, just in general, I just think like Anthony Lynn was on one. And
what is he like, the dad that you work your whole life for his approval?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You never get it.
And like, obviously, you weren't able to do a lot with Justin Herbert. A freak injury happened to your starter, and you had to start him like last minute. Obviously, that's going to limit your game plan going in. Yeah, no duh.
Wait, did Tyrod get injured, or was he just?
It was.
I thought he was just held out.
No, it was a rib
warming
thing.
up. He found like his rib was hurting and stuff.
And he is questionable this week to play the Panthers.
So Uncle Willie, Herbert's not a terrible pickup. I'm assuming the quarterback market is basically dried up with it being a 2-quarterback league. So he's probably the best you're going to find. And yes, he will be the long-term starter sooner rather than later. I would venture to say, assuming health for Herbert, that he starts at least 10 games this year.
But when he asks if he could go all in on his fab budget.
Well, for a second, in a 2-quarterback league.
Especially,
I would try to get him, yes, but when you say going all in week 3, depleting your entire fab like that over a guy that just had his first start ever and you really are uncertain about the future of this team, I would not be going all in.
Right, when you could wait for a Jameis who might open up. You know, there's other waiver wires we really like. I would only go all in on Herbert if this is a dynasty. And you don't mention it being a dynasty. And I would assume if it was a dynasty, Herbert would already be rostered.
I also don't think
so
you're going to
I wouldn't go all in.
I don't think you're going to have too much competition either with like Gardner Minshew, Ryan Tannehill. There's a lot of other guys that still have good weeks that are like down there on the list.
But they're rostered, though, is the thing.
They're rostered for sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. And the other thing is he does have Jimmy G with the injury.
Oh, yeah. No, he needs another quarterback.
So if that's where you're stuck, you go for it. There's a decent chance he starts again this week. I agree. He's going to be the starter halfway through and for the rest of the way.
Yeah, if you didn't have a backup quarterback in a 2-QB league, you're kind of already in hot water, so you might have forced your own hand there.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Word. I got one on the stream here from King La, I want to say. Would y'all keep Engram or Fant rest of season? I think this one is pretty damn easy.
Fant.
And, I mean, with Jeff Driscoll, he still didn't miss a beat. He had that toe tap catch down the sideline, which was pretty amazing. Fant looks like the real deal. We're hoping that, this injury bug doesn't continue to decimate the Broncos. But outside of that, it looks like, irrespective of who's at quarterback, he can still produce. And I think that Engram has shown, even though, the big concern with him was he's got the talent, but he gets injured. And that's why, it kind of drove his stock down in the draft. All of a sudden, he's healthy and he's not producing. And there's been injuries to other guys in the receiving game for the Giants.
And there are problems with Ingram. There's talk of he's not a good enough blocker, and Jason Garrett doesn't love him. Pat Shurmur's the perfect offensive coordinator for these types of tight ends, and he's in Denver with Noah Fant. He's no longer in New York with Evan Ingram.
Exactly.
That alone should split the tie. 2 weeks in, we've seen
I
enough.
don't even think
also,
it's even close to a tie either. So
Cortland Sutton out. That's your number 1 red zone target. I think Noah Fant is now your number 1 red zone target.
Yep.
That helps too.
And breaking, we confirmed the Devontae Freeman to the Giants. I don't care who's starting at running back for the Giants.
Yeah, their offensive line is so bad. That
I wasn't high on. I didn't have Saquon in my top 7.
And he's amazing, in terms of talent. So
definitely don't care that Devontae Freeman's starting there. That's a bummer. When I heard about the Rams being a possibility, I got kind of excited about that. But I guess that just means Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers, if he returns this week or next, becomes more important. Check us out on the podcast feed. We will keep being in the Broncos feed for a few more episodes. Soon enough, we will move on to the DNVR Fantasy, so subscribe to that. Leave us a 5-star review. Get yourself a $10 coupon. Go Nuggets.
Go Nuggets.
And yes, tune in to that same fantasy feed on Thursday so that we will answer more of your questions, get you set for going into week 3. I mean, with all the injuries, you really need the assistance that us or anyone else can provide. So tune in, ride with us. Thank you for riding with us on this. Get your bets in on DraftKings for the Nuggets. And best of luck to everyone. We will talk to you in a couple days.